Hello everyone, welcome to the Physiotherapy tutorial channel. In the 10 minutes tutorial series, today we will be discussing about the nervous system of the human body. In the last lecture, we have discussed about the types of the human cells, in which we specifically discussed about the nerves, that is the neurons, the functional unit of the nervous system. Today we are going to talk about the nervous system. So these are basically classified into two categories, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system comprises of the brain, which control most of the voluntary movement along with the awareness plus sensation, and the spinal cord. So let me give you a diagrammatic representation. So this is the cerebrum, the largest part of the brain, which has the infoldings, gyri and sulci. This is the fissure which divides into the lobes. Now this connects to the spinal cord via the brain stem. These are the extension of the spinal cord, that is the cauda equina. So this particular part becomes the brain and the cerebrum, and this becomes the spinal cord. Now the nerve that emerges out of the spinal cord from both the sides are called the spinal nerves. So in the green you can see the center in green color. These are the central nervous system, and the one emerges out from this particular central nervous system are called as the peripheral nervous system. So the nerve emerges out of the spinal cord, spinal nerves. Nerve emerges out of the brain and the brainstem, cranial nerves. Now extension of the nerves from the dorsal root ganglion are basically classified under the peripheral nerves. Now these peripheral nerves connects basically the central nervous system to the terminal parts of the body. So to the skin, to the muscles and to the organs are basically connected to the central nervous system by the peripheral nerves. So as simple as that. So all the nerves basically coming out of the central nervous system are the peripheral nervous system part. So cranial nerves, the nerve which comes from the brain and the brainstem. Spinal nerves, which emerges or exit out of the spinal cord. These are the spinal nerves. And then the third type you have the peripheral nerve, which are the extension from the axonal or the dorsal root ganglion to the terminal part of the organ, muscles or limbs or the skin. These are the peripheral nerves, which carries information towards the central nervous system and away from the nervous system. Now this information which is carried towards the central nervous system is included in one part of the peripheral nervous system, that is the somatic nervous system. So in Greek, soma means body. So the peripheral part of the body which gets connected to the central nervous system, that is the brain and spinal cord, is via the somatic. There is another category which is the autonomic nervous system, which basically control all the involuntary movements are basically under the autonomous nervous system. So in all, if we classify the nerves which are outside the central nervous system, these are basically your peripheral nervous system part. Now the rule, as we discussed earlier, is basically to connect the central nervous system to the organs, like all the organs, skin as well as the muscles of the upper limb and lower limb. You can also say that it is an extension of the central nervous system to most of the body parts. This somatic, as we discussed about the carrying information, they carry information towards the central nervous system and away from the central nervous system. Now if the nerves are carrying sensation towards the central nervous system, they are called as the sensory nerves, and the information which is coming from the central nervous system to the body parts are the motor nerve. So you can say sensory nerves are basically the afferent nerves, which is carrying the sensation or the information from the periphery to the spinal cord or directly to the brain via spinal cord. Okay, and motor you can call as the efferent nerves, which carries the information downward. That is from the central nervous system to the peripheral body part. As simple. So somatic are classified into two: sensory and motor. Sensory takes sensation towards the brain. Motor takes sensation away from the brain. As simple. So the one which goes up is sensory afferent. The one which comes down is the motor efferent. Okay, so let me write it down. The sensation which is carried towards the brain via the cranial nerves are basically in 12 pairs, and spinal are basically in 31 pairs. So now we are going to list down the 12 pairs of the cranial nerves, which out of these, the two emerges from the cerebrum and rest of them emerges from the brainstem. So right from the olfactory to optic to oculomotor, the trigeminal. So all these are basically the 12 pairs of the cranial nerves: abducen, facial, glossopharyngeal, vagus nerve, spinal accessory nerve. Okay, so these are the 12 pairs of the cranial nerve which emerges from the brain and brainstem. Now let's talk about the autonomous nervous system. These are responsible basically for the involuntary movements of the body, divided into two categories: sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic. In sympathetic nervous system, basically its response to the fight and flight situation, and parasympathetic is basically to control the body functions, like maintaining a homeostasis post stress or pain.